No rest on Martha's Vineyard for President Obama as he deals with quickly unfolding events in multiple hotspots around the world. Starting in Iraq, where more U.S. troops as well as French arms are pouring in to aid our Kurdish allies in their fight against militants who've self-proclaimed a caliphate. Those U.S. troops are not designated for a combat role. Instead, this is how Defense Secretary Chuck Hagel described the U.S. mission when he announced it at Camp Pendleton in California.
To take a closer look and give a more in-depth assessment of where we can continue to help the Iraqis with what they're doing and the threats that they are now dealing with.
Now, while the White House has repeatedly promised no boots on the ground to fight ISIS militants, the 129 troops ordered to Erbil in the northern part of Iraq include Marines and Special Forces. And they head to Iraq on the heels of hundreds more military advisors who were deployed to Baghdad in June. And joining me now is former Republican Senator Richard Lugar, who chaired the Senate Foreign Relations Committee. And sir, thank you very much for being here.
Thank you, Joy.
So let's start with our re-engagement in Iraq. What do you make of the fact that the United States is sending military advisors to include special forces back into that country? Do you see us winding up with a much larger military engagement in that country?
We could have a much larger engagement, but I think the President and Secretary Hagel have acted wisely to send advisors so we can size up the situation, find out where our intelligence can be most effective, and likewise those situations that are a crisis for people that need to be rescued. Specifically, the ISIS group, the militants, have vowed that they're going to create difficulty for the United States of America, that they're going to at least hit us quite apart from what's going on there. So this is a time of urgency, and the President is acting with the fact that in the Iraqi government, the business of getting to a new prime minister is making some headway with Mr. Abadi and Mr. Maliki hopefully stepping aside, although that remains to be seen. So it's a very difficult situation, even how to help people if you want to do so.
Yeah, indeed, sir. And you know, one of the questions that has been asked as this situation in Iraq unfolds and the chaos really in Syria and the continued death there and the fact that ISIS is operating in both of those countries, there has been a debate that former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton has joined about whether or not the U.S. could have avoided some of this chaos by actually arming Syria rebels early. What are your thoughts on that?
Well, it's always easy to second guess, and my thoughts are that it would have been very difficult to determine which rebels to arm. And as a matter of fact, criticism of the President now will come that he has no broad overall policy, but same stage that we did have the potential for an attack, an air attack on Syria. You'll recall that the Senate Foreign Relations Committee voted in favor of that in an emergency meeting. The House did not act very rapidly. It was apparent that the Congress as a whole was not going to act, and the British Parliament said no. And so as a result, we at least got some benefit from getting the Syrian chemical weapons out of there, which is a benefit now that ISIS has taken over such a large portion of Syria, which might have included some of those chemical weapons. But it's not been easy for the President working with the Congress and with the American public. I think currently it's apparent that we want to be helpful, and it's best to have advisors on the ground to protect Americans who are in Baghdad to begin with, our embassy, but likewise now to protect those who were up on the mountainside near the Kurdish border, and to try to bring some relief there while we size up really how the government's going to work out in Iraq generally, and what the relationship will be with the Kurds and the Iraqi government.
Indeed. And so, you know, you've touched on something I think that is a broader question about the United States' role in the world, whether it's the leverage or lack thereof that we have in the Israeli-Palestinian conflict, whether it is this attempt to disengage from Iraq and being pulled back in, or even when you look at what's happening with Vladimir Putin with Russia and what's going on with Ukraine. Do you feel that the United States has begun to withdraw from the former kind of hegemonic role that we had as a world power, and does that have negative consequences for the world because Americans are reticent to get involved around the world?
No, I don't think we've withdrawn at all. As a matter of fact, the idea of our pivot to Asia has clearly brought a lot more activity in that sector of the world where we felt there might be some strategic problems coming along. We've continued to try to work until recently on arms control with the Russians, and that has been a benefit to them, to us, as well as to the rest of the world. But it appears to me that right now the United States is fully engaged in trying to buttress NATO, in trying to bring the European community together and backing Ukraine. I think it's a busy time for diplomacy in the United States, and likewise the military sent out, as in the case you've cited in Iraq.
And sir, you know, you herald an era that does feel like it is over, which is one of bipartisanship. I mean, you quite famously worked very well with then Senator Barack Obama and developed a good relationship with him that really carried over till the time when he was president, up until you were no longer in the Senate. What do you think has happened to deteriorate the ability of the two parties to just work together on big picture things that all Americans are supposed to care about?
Well, for the past few years, the partisanship has become much more intense. I'm hopeful it's cyclical and will disappear in due course, but it won't for a while. The nature of our politics is one of extremes right now in terms of primary elections, quite apart from the general elections. I'm hopeful, however, that even in the midst of all of this, and I see some possibilities of it, that there will be support for the President, for Secretary Hagel, for Secretary Kerry, as we are facing specific problems in Ukraine and in Iraq, as we've cited already, but there could be others bobbing up all of the time. We're really going to have much more understanding, and I believe the American people are going to demand this. The American people will also have to be supportive of actions that are taken by the President and the Congress. Right now, much of the polling indicates that Americans do not want to become involved in the rest of the world. Difficult to be a President or a Congress under those circumstances, and yet at the same time, that's the job you have to do. And I'm proud of the work that the President and the Congress are doing, and I think we're on the right track.
Well, sir, I think I speak for many Americans when I say that your style and brand of politics is sorely missed, and I really do appreciate you being here.
Thank you so much.
Former Senator Dick Lugar, thanks very much for being here.